Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. A few people have asked me about the Conor Benn interview with Radio Raheem on Seconds Out. What did I think of it? I wasn't going to make another video, but I thought maybe I should, because I've certainly been someone who's been critical of the way Ben's handled himself, not just Ben, but his team and Eddie Hearn. And so, the guy is essentially making an apology, doing his whole sort of mea culpa routine. Maybe I should, in the interest of fairness, I should make a video and just give my opinions on it. At least mention the fact that the guy is now saying, sorry for a number of things. But it was a lengthy interview. You've probably seen it. If not, it's on Seconds Out. And Ben talked a lot about the past however many months it's been. What has it been now? 7, 8 months now? Oof, time flies. And he was talking about the fact that he's still adamant that he's innocent. Adamant in the sense that he doesn't feel he had anything in his system. And at the last 10 minutes of this interview were the most revealing, because he is still defiant in the sense that he says, I don't think I had anything in my system. And then when Radio Raheem said, well, you claim to have evidence that that's the case, why don't you reveal it? This, great dossier we've all heard about. He then said, well, it's confidential, isn't it? It's confidential information. And then he started to say, well, no other fighter has faces. Can you think of another fighter who's been... He seemed to be saying under that much scrutiny, who's been asked... At one point, he seemed to be saying, can you remember any other fighter who's been asked to prove their innocence that much? Well, if you're asked to prove your innocence, it's not really degrees of it. Either you're asked or you're not. You could be asked vehemently or you could be asked casually, and it amounts to the same thing. And there's still an element of, I am innocent, I've been unfairly treated. And that's fine. That's fine. If he feels he's been unfairly treated, then he's entitled to stand his ground. He also mentioned a couple of really things that just are beyond me. Like he said, well, I don't know. Does the board have a vendetta against my dad because he ripped his license up 30 years previously? No, Conor, they don't. They almost certainly don't. I mean, apart from the fact they're different people running the board now than they were 30 years ago, this isn't the mafia. Well, some of the decisions that we see in boxing, which are sanctioned by the board, in support of certain decisions and certain stoppages and certain other things, you could be forgiven for thinking there's something naughty going on. But I think invariably the board is trying to do an extremely difficult job well, and God knows they sometimes fail. Don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting otherwise. But they do have a pretty thankless task. So for Ben to say they might have some vendetta against the Benn family is, I think, kind of nonsensical. And he wasn't saying that. He stopped short of saying that. He was saying, well, that's one thing is, I don't know. No, Conor, no, don't go down that route. But on a more positive note, he was saying the right things. And he was saying, I'm an emotional guy. I was in a dark place. Obviously I'm paraphrasing. I felt absolutely terrible. He alluded to feeling suicidal. He talked about his family a lot and his son and his wife and, how terrible the whole experience was. And, it's easy to sort of dismiss this and say, well, why didn't you realise it at the time? I don't think we appreciate what the pressure boxers are under, especially if they're carrying a name like that, and they're also in the public eye on such a large platform. Then yes, that pressure can get to you, and you can end up, especially if it's a disastrous, catastrophic turn of events as happened last year. It can get to you. So I'm gonna cut him a little bit of slack there. It did take him a long time to come round to realising that he was handling the situation very poorly and coming across as being a very self-entitled, somewhat spoilt brat. But okay, he's now saying, I know, I understand where you're coming from. He also said that he's quite happy to work with the board. Now he wants to fight in Britain, which means he'll have to work with the board. It would be another PR disaster if he went for a Luxembourg license or a BUI license or something else. But no, he was kind of saying, without actually fully saying it, that he wants to work with the board. He also said he's worked with VADA and UCAD and he did still have a little go at the board, saying, well, they don't recognise VADA, and yet they were taking a VADA test as gospel truth. Okay, that's what Hearn has said. That may be a valid point. I wouldn't dismiss that point entirely. Either you recognise an organisation or you don't. But the question is, for me personally, is he sincere? Because we're all entitled to make fools of ourselves. We've all done it in the past. Conor Benn is a guy who runs on energy, raw energy and emotion, just like his father did. And it doesn't sound like he's, I don't want to sound rude, but he doesn't sound like he's someone who is a great intellectual, shall we say, or necessarily that academically well-trained, well-schooled. But then he never pretended to be, so I'm not knocking him, and I'm not saying he's stupid, by the way. I'm just saying he's, he won't be taking any Mensa tests any time soon, which is fine. Not many of us do, myself included, but I'm just leaving it out there. But at the same time, if you're running on that energy, then that ego and that raw emotion, and that becomes your default setting, you have to carry the can for your behaviour. And at last, he seems to be saying he's doing that. The question is he sincere? Because if he isn't sincere, if this really is a case of finally some sort of damage limitation, then it was a wasted 40 minutes, that interview, because you've got to be sincere. And I've never ever said that Conor Benn is knowingly ingested something. I may have said in the past that if you put a gun to my head, I would think probably someone in his team definitely knew, because I don't see how you can fail 2 tests. But I'm not someone who said, to me, because Conor Benn isn't a great intellectual, doesn't seem to have any great insight, he will rely on his team. And for it to be a case of him having absolutely no idea, I mean, you have to be naive or perhaps willfully ignorant, or maybe even a little stupid, to not notice that. But it is feasible he didn't know he had anything in his system. What I don't accept, and I've never accepted, is this idea that both those 2 tests are erroneous. You've really got to prove it. If you've got one test, those positive tests are proof against you. You are therefore now in the dock, and you have to present the case for the defence, because the prosecution have laid out their evidence. And Ben hasn't done that. He talks about his dossier, but suddenly when people are saying, show it to us, prove it, if you've got the evidence, prove it, suddenly, well, it's confidential. Well, I am, but he did say, I am actually working with the board, or we are actually working with the board and VADA and UCAD and all the rest of them. Look, ultimately, I don't know whether he's sincere or not. If he is sincere, okay, that's a step in the right direction, because it proves that suddenly he's parked his ego at the door and he's actually listening to reason now, and he's thinking in a more logical sense. He's thinking about the future in a sensible way that isn't entirely self-destructive. If he's insincere and he's just been told by various people, whether it's Hearn or his father or whatever, look, just carry the can, go out there and say sorry, and he's doing it without any great meaning, without any worth, well, he claims to be a Christian. He will know about the gospel of the hypocrite. But I don't know. But this is quite clearly, the start of the rehabilitation of Conor Benn. The fact that he said that, the fact that he's come out and said those things. Will it wash? I think there's always going to be a dark cloud over him. And the best thing he can do is, in my opinion, and again, I've never felt that type of pressure, obviously not in the public eye, he's going to have to really show that he is contrite, that he is sorry, that he is going to move forward and accept that he can't change the past. And if he's got evidence that supports his claims, he's got to put it out there. There's just no two ways about it. He's got to show it to the public. He talks about showing it to the board and working with the drug agencies. That's fine, but you've got to put it out there so that the public, if you've got evidence, you can win a large proportion of the public over. Obviously, you won't win, the trolls and the people who are just, thick as shite, and people who just want to hate on you. You're not going to win those. But what are you thinking about them for anyway? Just get rid of them. Just ignore them. Ignore them. I know younger people. I'm not playing the age card here, but I know younger people find it more difficult to, tell haters to just piss off. I get it. They kind of, they kind of want to react. Whereas when you get to sort of a little bit older, like I am, it's just so much blather. It's just piss and wind. You just laugh at it. So I know it's not easy for someone, especially a hothead like Conor Benn, to do that. But then when I was young, I was a hothead and I wouldn't let things slide. Now I'm much older. Wisdom comes with age. Life experience, there is no substitute. And this has been a hell of an experience, a hell of a learning curve for Conor Benn. He's now got to, if he's sincere, and you know what, maybe I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I will. But I want to see some evidence. I want to see some evidence. Ultimately, talk is cheap. The old adage is true. You've got to go out there and prove it. And I want to see a consistent, a consistency of doing the right thing as well as saying the right thing, and being transparent about your future career. And working with the board, I think, would be a very good start in that. So what do you think about this? I know some of you have already commented on it and asked me to do this video. I hope I've been fair to Conor Benn. Having said things about him in the past, I hope this video, I'm just giving my honest opinion. You may not agree with it. And to be honest, there's plenty of areas of this subject where I'm thinking to myself, I don't know. I just don't know. But what are your opinions? What do you surmise from the whole thing? Do you think he's sincere? Do you think he's not sincere? Why do you think it's been done? Is it a cynical exercise in trying to limit the damage, finally? Or has Ben actually turned a corner where, that penny has dropped, to mix metaphors, and finally he's thinking, you know what? Because he did say in the video, I understand now. I see where you, the public, are coming from. I understand why people said this. I was just so upset and I was in such a dark place. And all of that can ring true. And I must be honest, watching the video, it didn't strike me that he was being insincere. It can't have been a nice place to be at, even though he handled it appallingly, and so did his team, people who are older than him and should know better. It can't have been a nice place to be. But generally speaking, I'm a forgiving sort of guy. So we'll see. But what do you think? Leave your comments below. Thanks for your time, as always. If you could subscribe to the channel if you're new, I'd appreciate that. And also hit the like button. Looking forward to reading your comments. Bye for now.